I used to think betrayal had a smell, like perfume on a collar, cheap whiskey in the air, the faint trace of cologne that doesn't belong to you. But when you work in my world, betrayal smells like toner ink, stale coffee, and a spreadsheet that doesn't reconcile. My name's Daniel Rourke, 42, senior forensic accountant for a boutique firm in Chicago called Kessler and Wild. We audit mergers, untangle embezzlement, and investigate financial crimes for corporations that don't like the word fraud in the news. I've always been good with numbers. Numbers don't lie. They tell you everything, if you know where to look. It's how I found out my wife was cheating. Not with a man. With my career. With my trust. And eventually with my entire goddamn life. Her name's Vanessa. We met 12 years ago at a financial compliance conference in Dallas. She was dazzling, sharp, stunning, a wealth strategist with her own firm and sharper instincts than half the men I knew. We married fast. Moved into a high-rise in River North. Life felt like a joint IPO, promising, profitable, and growing. We even started a side project together, Linwood Fidelity Consulting, a small advisory firm for legacy clients, high-net-worth individuals with messy estates or off-the-books holdings. I handled the audits. She handled the handshakes. At least, that's what I thought. The first red flag came in a quarterly report I didn't even prepare. It was a simple discrepancy. One of our client accounts, labeled JF Legacy Holdings, had a flagged deposit of $1.87 million. The money had been moved through 4 shell accounts and landed in a Cayman trust one didn't recognize. I checked the authorization chain. The signatory? Vanessa. That wasn't unusual. We were both partners on the firm's accounts. What was strange was that it bypassed the protocol we'd created. Dual signature thresholds above $500,000. Vanessa never violated protocol. Until now. I didn't confront her immediately. You learn not to react in my line of work. I made a copy of the transaction. Pulled metadata. And then something hit me harder than the wire trail. The original request for that fund transfer came not from Vanessa's IP address, but from our home network. While she was supposedly in New York on business, I checked her travel itinerary. No flight records. No hotel check-ins. And that's when the bottom fell out. Because if she hadn't been in New York, where had she been? And more importantly, whose money had she just laundered through our firm? Over the next week, I did what I do best. I audited everything. Emails, transfers, client records, chat logs. I pulled data off her tablet at night while she slept, backed up her cloud drive while she was in the shower. What I found wasn't just betrayal. It was a criminal enterprise. Over the past 18 months, Vanessa had created 7 shell corporations, all tied to estate clients I hadn't touched. Through these entities, she'd moved nearly $14 million offshore, some of it from accounts that were supposed to be dormant. Legacy clients. Dead men. And every time a move was made, she forged my signature or rerouted the approvals through automated scheduling to make it look like I'd signed off. She didn't cheat on me with a person. She cheated with a system she built behind my back. Used my reputation to shield it. Used my name to validate it. And worst of all, she was damn good at it. But the thing about numbers? They always leave a trail. And if Vanessa thought she could outmaneuver me inside a spreadsheet, she forgot one thing. I was the one who taught her how to bury ghosts in ledgers. Now I'm going to use that same skill set to bury her entire empire. Quietly, perfectly, and legally. I didn't confront her that week. I bought time. Filed my own quiet claim with a trusted federal contact at the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Built a mirrored ledger off every transaction I could trace. And I called an old friend, Silas Neely, ex-IRS investigator turned freelance compliance hitman. A guy who doesn't flinch when things get dark. He answered with his usual growl. You in trouble, Rourke? I told him the truth. No, but she is. Because the best revenge in finance? Isn't fury. It's precision. And Vanessa just made the biggest miscalculation of her life. I didn't change the locks. Didn't change my tone. Didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing I knew. Instead, I kissed her cheek the next morning and handed her a cup of espresso, just like always. She sipped it distractedly, talking about some new referral client in Boca Raton. I smiled, nodded, and mentally marked the time she left the apartment, 7:42 a.m. That was important, because I needed to make my next move count, and she couldn't know. At exactly 8:03, I met Silas Neely at a breakfast joint on Kinsey, one of those places with burnt toast, thick-cut bacon, and a server who calls everyone Han. Silas looked like a crow in a suit, black shirt, narrow eyes, and a voice like gravel in a blender. I read the ledgers, he said, stabbing his eggs. She's good. She learned from the best, I said. He looked up. You mad? Not yet. I'm curious first. He nodded like that was the right answer. Then he slid a folder across the table. Inside, a full map of Vanessa's shell companies. But he'd gone deeper. 3 of those shells were tied to other firms. Bigger ones. And one of them belonged to a high-profile hedge fund under SEC investigation, Dalhousie Wind Capital. If she's touching their money, Silas said, you're not just dealing with a greedy spouse. I looked at him. You're dealing with a laundress for corporate fraud. That changed the game. Vanessa wasn't just siphoning forgotten estates. She was cleaning high-risk capital for someone far more dangerous than herself. And the best part? She'd done it under my audit license. Which meant if this went public before I had full control, I'd go down with her. I spent the next 3 days setting a digital perimeter. I mirrored every login she made into our firm's cloud. Created shadow flags in our banking software, so if she tried to move money again, I'd get pinged in real time. Then I sent a quiet email to Randall Ng, our in-house compliance officer at Kessler and Wild. I didn't tell him about Vanessa. Just flagged a few inconsistencies in a side audit request and suggested he open a formal inquiry, internal only, for now. I wasn't just laying a trap. I was building a case around her so airtight it would crush any exit strategy she had left. But then something unexpected happened. She moved fast. Too fast. On Thursday, I got a calendar invite, joint meeting, Linwood plus Client X. Vanessa had scheduled it from her office, tagged as urgent, and didn't use any of our normal labels. That wasn't like her. She was always meticulous about naming conventions, appearances, branding. This felt sloppy or desperate. I accepted the meeting but didn't plan to show up. Instead, I looped in Silas, who installed a network sniffer into the video call and traced the connection. The client? A man named Russell Vane, former VP at Dalhousie Wind Capital, recently indicted. The meeting was a handoff. She was liquidating one of the shells before regulators froze it. She was cutting the rope, which meant she knew something. She knew the walls were moving, and she wasn't going to wait for them to close in. That night, she came home late. Hair damp. Smelled like airport soap and adrenaline. I pretended to sleep. She stood by the bedroom door for a long time, watching me. I could feel her staring. Could feel the weight of her calculation. Would I ask questions? Would I pretend not to know? Would I fold? She said nothing. Just walked into the bathroom and closed the door. I lay there in the dark, my pulse slow and quiet, because she didn't know I had one last play, something she never saw coming. The next morning, I met with Elias Kent, the CFO of Dalhousie Wind Capital. He owed me a favor. 2 years ago, I helped him avoid an SEC penalty by exposing one of his own analysts before the press got it. He was clean, or at least cleaner than the rest. I showed him what I had, Vanessa's firms, the accounts, the transactions that linked back to his fund's internal slush pool. He didn't blink. Tell me what you want, he said. I want you to freeze it all, I replied. All movement. Everything tied to the shell accounts. And if she notices? That's the point. By Friday night, I had everything in motion. The trap was set. All the entities were flagged. All outgoing transfers from Linwood Fidelity would now trigger federal review. And the final nail? I filed a formal disclosure request with FinCEN. As an insider. Not to protect myself. To expose her, fully, and trigger an investigation she could no longer control. She thought she could erase me through the systems I built. But I just turned those same systems into a weapon she couldn't dodge. Because when you turn numbers into ghosts, eventually, they come back to haunt you. Friday night, 11:27 p.m. Vanessa stood in our kitchen with a glass of wine she hadn't tasted. The bottle was open, but the pour was for show. She hadn't said a word since she walked in. I watched from the hallway in shadows. She didn't know I'd seen the freeze notices go through, didn't know the transfers had stalled. Not yet. But she knew something. You don't spend your life building illegal pipelines without sensing when the pressure changes. She finally spoke. We should take a trip, she said. Where? Somewhere quiet. Maybe the lake house. Disconnect. I studied her carefully. Vanessa hated quiet. She was a skyscraper woman, elevators, noise, tension. And now she wanted to isolate me? This wasn't a vacation. It was containment. I didn't answer. Just nodded. Let her think I'd consider it. Then I did what I had to do. I broke into her secondary laptop. Not the one she used for work. The personal one. The encrypted one she kept in her closet, tucked behind old coats, under a false bottom in her luggage. Took me 4 hours and 2 password cracks to get in. What I found wasn't a new spreadsheet. It was a plan. Vanessa had created a false ledger of my own firm's finances. It showed inflated client revenue, questionable expenditures, and even a falsified email thread between me and someone listed as HK, Zurich. She was building a fall guy file. Me. And if things went south, she was going to present it as the real fraud. A concerned whistleblower wife. Betrayed, but righteous. I could already hear the PR spin. He'd been forging things for years. I didn't know until it was too late. And if I didn't act now, she might actually pull it off. But Vanessa made a mistake. One I'd been waiting for. She'd used the same email draft in both her clean and dirty documents, copy-pasting a metadata-heavy auto-signature. It meant the email hadn't originated with me. It originated with her. That was all Silas needed. He built a timestamped, metadata-authenticated timeline that proved the forgeries originated from her home network, using her device IDs. We had her. But we weren't going to bury her in court. Not yet. Because the next move needed to happen in front of her. Where it hurt most. Monday morning. Vanessa walked into our office on Wabash in a navy blue suit like she wasn't quietly on fire. The staff nodded. She smiled. Mass perfect. What she didn't know. I'd already scheduled an executive compliance briefing. Internal. Mandatory. All senior stakeholders. And I'd invited Randall Ng and an agent from the Financial Crimes Task Force on the record. The conference room was bright with morning sun. Vanessa stepped in.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing experience, but we really need your support, namely a subscription to the channel, which can make it possible to hire a professional voice actor and make the best content for you.
Saw the folders, saw the faces, and froze. Daniel, she asked, voice-edged. I didn't answer. I just clicked the remote. And the projection screen lit up with a header. Unauthorized financial activities connected to LFC partners, preliminary internal audit findings. Her face drained. Randall read aloud. Silas laid out the mirrored trail. The agent asked 3 questions. Vanessa didn't answer a single one, not even when Randall asked her to step outside. She was suspended from the firm in under 6 minutes, without argument, because for once in her life, Vanessa had nothing left to say. But I knew this wasn't over. She wasn't built to fold. That night, she didn't come home. I didn't expect her to. Instead, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. You think you're clever, but you're not clean either. You want to play with fire? I'll bring heat you don't even know exists. Click. The voice wasn't Vanessa's. It was a man's. And he didn't sound like a lawyer. He sounded like a problem. Later that night, Silas texted. You were right. One of her shells has offshore transfers to a holding group in Boston. Shells registered under GHK Consortium. GHK. I didn't recognize the initials until I searched further. Then it hit me like a shot through the chest. GHK stood for Grant Harlan King, Vanessa's ex-husband, a man she swore was out of her life, a man who disappeared after being indicted on fraud charges in 2011, a man she always claimed to hate. And now, they were in business together, which meant everything I thought about her betrayal was just the surface. This wasn't a crime of greed. It was a long con, years in the making, and I was the final piece, the one she needed to walk away clean. But now, I was the piece about to blow the board apart. You don't just disappear from the SEC's radar. Grant Harlan King had. 11 years ago, his real estate fund vaporized after a series of bad foreign investments. The feds came knocking, and he ran. Vanessa divorced him just months before the house of cards collapsed. Back then, I believed her, that he was abusive, manipulative, a ghost she barely escaped. Now I knew better. He was the architect. She was the engineer. And I'd been their blueprint. Silas didn't want me to meet King. You go in blind, he's got control, he said. Let me handle it. But this wasn't his to finish. Vanessa chose me as the fall guy, the clean face, the compliance shield. She made me a front for King's second act. They thought I'd either stay loyal or fold under pressure. They forgot who I am. I don't bluff. I reached out through a burner channel on the dark side of the fintech world, encrypted chat rooms, offshore nodes. Places where ex-analysts and financial mercenaries made back-alley deals in code and crypto. Looking to sell out a partner, I wrote. Can prove he's skimming. It took less than a day. A ping. User, West Bay Trust 69. Message, time, place, quiet. I gave him a warehouse in West Loop, a decommissioned cold storage unit Silas and I used for sensitive hardware work. No surveillance. No leaks. Just walls. He showed up 20 minutes late. Oh, clean cut. Polished like a man who used to wear $3,000 suits and now lived in the quiet corner of Risk. Gray at the temples, dark coat, glassy stare. Mr. King, I said. He paused, the faintest flicker of surprise crossing his face. Mr. Rourke, you look tired. I've been cleaning up your ex-wife's mess, I replied. And apparently yours. That hit. He chuckled. I'll give her credit. She said you'd come out swinging once you caught on. I told her you'd fold. Bad read, I said. He shrugged. We both made mistakes. You made yours when you trusted her. That one didn't get a smile. We stood in silence. Then I dropped the folder. It contained full financials. Vanessa's fake ledgers. The offshore movement logs. The fake Fall Guy documents she crafted, using his original template style. King flipped through them, slow and deliberate. This everything? No, I said. This is the part one give to the feds if anything happens to me. He looked up. And the rest? The rest goes public. To journalists. Investors. The SEC. Even some hedge fund competitors who'd love to eat your offshore assets for lunch. His jaw clenched. Why not just walk away, Daniel? You've won. Because she tried to burn my name, I said. And because I know what this was. He narrowed his eyes. It wasn't about the money, I said. It was about control. You built the shell. She made me the mask. But you underestimated the man behind it. King studied me. Then he said something I didn't expect. She was supposed to cut you loose 6 months ago. Said she couldn't yet. Said you were still useful. That you'd never see it coming. He shook his head. She was wrong. He left after that. I didn't stop him. Because he didn't matter anymore. I already had what I needed. 2 hours later, I triggered the final wave. I sent a file packet to FinCEN, the SEC, and a syndicate of financial journalists. Not under my name. Under Vanessa's. Her accounts. Her device signatures. Her ID. All of it traceable to her exact movements. Timed to the moment she tried to move $400,000 to a dummy LLC that afternoon. It was over. Not loud, but devastating. I came home just after sunset. The apartment was quiet. Vanessa was sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of untouched wine in front of her. Your friend King called, she said. He's not my friend. He said you threatened him. No. I gave him an exit. I said. One I'm not giving you. She looked up. You leaked everything. I didn't answer. She already knew. I gave you a career, she said. You gave me a cage, I replied. She took a breath, steadying herself. You know I'll land on my feet. I hope you do, I said. But not with my name. Not with my records. And not with my silence. The door closed behind her 5 minutes later. No suitcase. No last words. Just the click of heels on marble, and a silence I finally understood wasn't empty. It was earned. The next morning, my inbox was full. The SEC acknowledged receipt. Kessler and Wild cleared me in writing. 3 journalists asked for interviews. And a student reporter from Northwestern wrote the most unexpected headline. The accountant who unmasked the mask. That one I kept. Because for once, I wasn't the man behind the ledger. I was the man who rewrote it. I thought it would feel like relief. Watching the headlines drop. Seeing Vanessa's name slide down into that cold space where financial criminals go. Disgraced, disavowed, denied by their peers. But it didn't feel like justice. Not yet. Because she didn't run. She pivoted. It started with a podcast. A slick, high-production, investigative show hosted by an opportunistic media lawyer named Chase Winder. Vanessa appeared as a surprise guest in an episode called In the Shadows of Power, The Whistleblower Wife. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. She talked about coerced complicity, a man I once trusted, and compliance officers who looked the other way. She spun the story, and it worked. Social media split in two. Some saw her as the snake. Others, as a woman trapped in her husband's web of lies. It was brilliant and reckless, because if she'd walked away quietly, the feds might have left her with some dignity. But now, she was provoking fire, and I still had the match. Silas warned me. She's baiting you. She wants you emotional. You hit back. She plays the victim again. I'm not hitting back, I said. I'm ending it. The podcast lit a match, but the spark came later. Vanessa filed an injunction to claim joint intellectual property ownership of our advisory firm's internal systems. everything I built over 10 years. It wasn't about the money. It was about the blueprint. She wanted credit. And if she got it, she'd rewrite history, not just publicly, but legally. So I played the long move. I didn't fight her in court. I licensed the entire system to a trust, not under my name, but under my father's. A retired Navy engineer with a clean legacy, no financial attachments, and no digital profile. The system became his intellectual capital, a tribute project archived in an open-source transparency grant. I announced it publicly in a press release to honor the people who taught me how to build, not steal. It went viral. And just like that, Vanessa's injunction collapsed. You can't claim theft on public code dedicated to a war veteran. She tried to appeal. The court didn't even hear it. That was the first death blow. The second? I reached out to an editor at Forbes who'd covered financial scandals for 2 decades. Told him the full story off the record. Then I handed him proof Vanessa used pre-signed compliance slips to falsify account audits 3 years ago. He cross-checked. Confirmed. Printed the headline. From fidelity to fraud, how a rising star became her own client. And this time, there was no podcast. No spin. Just silence. The kind that means a door just slammed shut. But even then, she didn't call. Didn't text. I think that was her last play, to erase me. If she couldn't win the narrative, she'd erase the chapter. Pretend I was never the husband. Never the architect. Just a bump in the road of her next reinvention. And that's what finally burned. Not her crimes, but the erasure. The way she moved through people like numbers in a ledger. Add, subtract, carry over, delete. So I made one final move. Not out of spite. Out of truth. I compiled everything: emails, metadata, court documents, shell structures, fake ledgers, podcast transcripts, audit reports. I published it, not as an expose, but as a case study, titled The Compliance Marriage, a Cautionary Anatomy of Trust, Fraud, and Internal Blindness. I sent it to MIT Sloan Business Review. They ran it, with one condition. I remain anonymous. I agreed, because in the end, this wasn't about me. It was about the system. How even the sharpest people can be weaponized. How love becomes leverage. How trust, when distorted, becomes the perfect cover. Vanessa's name never left the blacklists. She was quietly removed from every advisory board she sat on. The firm we built together, I dissolved it. Publicly. Permanently. Not because I lost, but because it didn't deserve to survive her. And me? I started over. Built a new firm with just one rule carved into the plaque by the door. Trust nothing that can't bleed. Because data may lie. But people? They always reveal themselves, eventually. You just have to follow the trail. And if they turn you into a ghost, make sure you come back, with the whole ledger. 6 months later, winter came early. The lake froze out near Evanston, and so did the last of Vanessa's legal efforts. The SEC closed their case, quietly. No formal prison time, just a full asset forfeiture, professional blacklisting, and a settlement that erased her from the financial world. Some called it mercy. I called it containment. She moved west, I heard. New name, new story. Some say she teaches financial literacy now, ironically. I never bothered to confirm, because I wasn't chasing her anymore. I'd already outrun what she tried to make me into. I sold the condo. Too many ghosts in the walls. Moved into a smaller walk-up in Logan Square. No elevators. No concierge. Just a sturdy lock, a steel kettle, and a view of a quiet street where nobody cared what firm you used to run. I still work numbers, but not the way I used to. Now, I do recovery audits pro bono. I help small businesses and family-run shops find missing funds, plug losses, clean their books. The kind of people Vanessa never saw as worth scamming. It feels honest. Not just the work, the life. One morning, a letter showed up. No return address. The paper was expensive. The handwriting perfect. It was from her. You won, it read. But you lost too. They'll never remember me the way you think. And they'll never remember you at all. There was no signature. Just that. I burned it. Not out of anger. Out of freedom. Because it proved what I always suspected. She didn't care who won. She only cared who got remembered. And now, her legacy was ash. That night, I poured a glass of rye and opened the notebook I kept since it all began. Inside were 2 lists. Column A, systems I built. Column B, people I trusted. Only one name remained in column B. Mine. But that wasn't the end. Because in cleaning up my past, I'd uncovered something worth saving. A young woman named Jasmine Ortega, a junior analyst at Kessler and Wild, the firm I left behind. She was the only one who caught the first discrepancy on her own, long before I exposed Vanessa. She just didn't know what she'd found. I reached out, quietly, mentored her, showed her how to follow the real trails, gave her the case files I'd archived under lock and encryption. She read them all. Then she called me one night and said, "You should teach this. What they don't write in the manuals. The stuff that makes or breaks integrity." And for the first time in years, I felt proud. Not powerful, not vindicated, just proud. So I started something new. Not a firm, a program. A digital classroom for compliance professionals, investigators, and young analysts. Not corporate-sponsored. No shiny branding. Just truth. The first module? How to see the lie inside the truth. The second? How to leave without burning. And the last? How to survive when the fraud lives in your home. Enrollment grew. Slowly. Organically. The people who needed it found it. And they wrote to me. Thanked me. Shared stories of fraud, betrayal, resilience. One even said, "You didn't just help me find the fraud. You helped me find myself again." That's when I knew. I hadn't just won. I'd healed. The ghost Vanessa tried to create? The man erased in footnotes and framed documents? He never made it. But the man who remained? He walked out of the fire. Ledger intact. Head high. No lies left in the margins.
What do you think of the story? Write in the comments.